Hi everyone! Today we're going to take a look at the best white motherboards in the market for this year. First, we're going to show you our top 10 best picks, and we'll talk about what you should look for before buying a white motherboards. You can find links to all of the products we've mentioned in this video down in the description below. Let's get started. At the first position of our list, we have MSI's X194's Wi-Fi. The chrome-forward, dragon-themed design isn't the only reason to be a fan of MSI motherboards, but it never hurts. Too many motherboards are the uninspiring carbon fiber soil that you build your PC on top of. The MSI's X194's Wi-Fi gaming motherboard might not be technically white, but the large amounts of silver trim will make for an absolutely stunning base for whatever components you choose to install on it. The MSI's X194's is an ATX form factor, which makes it suitable for all mid-tower and most full-tower case builds. ATX motherboards are by far the most common form factor for PC building and can accommodate virtually all but the most extreme builds. Furthermore, it is made exclusively for the current generation of Intel processors. It can only be equipped with 12th generation Intel Core, Celeron, or Pentium processors, which is a huge plus, considering how well they've been performing. The processor isn't the only area where you're going to have to start from the ground up with the current generation. This motherboard is also only compatible with the new DDR5 form factor for memory. It can hold up to 128 to 5600 DDR5, which presents a significant boost over DDR4, which peaked at 5330 frames, and most commonly sold at speeds well below that. However, DDR5 is a fairly recent launch and has only been on the market since November of last year. As a result, it can be hard to find in stock and is often only available at significant markups from resellers. Like most ATX motherboards, the MSI's X194's Wi-Fi gaming motherboard has 3 PCIe slots and so can support multiple GPUs to enable high-level streaming or even crypto mining. Plus, there are a total of 5 M2 slots. In addition to that, the MSI's X194's is equipped with the most current connection capabilities, including Wi-Fi 6 and Bluetooth 5e. The maximum LAN connection speed is 2.5 GHz, which is higher than the default of one we've seen in previous years, but is still below the max speeds of 10 we were already seeing in 2020 and 2021. Lastly, this motherboard has a total of 9 USB ports, but only one USB-C port, which will prove to be more and more of an oversight as the year progresses. It has both an HDMI port and a DisplayPort if you intend to run your display through the CPU rather than the GPU, which can be useful for performing boot tests. Moving on to the next at number 2 with MSI MEG Z5 190 Ace Gold Edition. You may have noticed from the name that the MSI MEG Z5 190 Ace Gold Edition gaming motherboard isn't the clearest contender for being a white motherboard, but it's just too pretty to pass. Plus, since when did white and gold not go together? The scale design and gold trim on top of the brushed aluminum heat shields make this look less like a piece of space-age tech and more like a mysterious artifact from your favorite RPG. The MSI MEG Z5 190 Ace Gold Edition gaming motherboard is an ATX board allowing for a wide range of implementation. Unlike a lot of the motherboards for sale in 2022, it's not designed with the newest generation of processors in mind. Instead, it's still equipped with the LGA 1200 socket, making it compatible with just the 10th and 11th generation Intel processors. However, going with one of the more powerful CPUs from the previous generation is a common and legitimate way to get a powerful build while freeing up money for components that are going to make a more immediate difference in overall performance. The philosophy of enabling the most powerful components from the previous generation continues throughout the rest of the motherboard. You can install up to 128 of the fastest DDR4 available. Besides that, there are 3 PCIe 4.0 x16 ports if you decide to install multiple GPUs. The number 3 position is held by Asus ROG Strix X 190 gaming Wi-Fi. The Asus ROG Strix X 190 gaming Wi-Fi motherboard is the perfect motherboard for a powerful, current generation PC build. The large silver heatsinks and customizable RGB elements, which default to a gorgeous teal out of the box, make this a top choice for white motherboards in 2022. The basic compatibility coupled with the overclocking potential make this a motherboard you can build a ton of power on top of. As a GIGABYTE motherboard, this is an ATX motherboard designed with the newly released 12th generation Intel processors in mind. It can be loaded with any of the Alder Lake processors, including the Core, Pentium, and Celeron models. Unlike the MSI version of the GIGABYTE, the Asus opted to maintain DDR4 compatibility on the ROG Strix 690A. That could be an issue with future compatibility as DDR5 becomes the standard. But with the price and accessibility of DDR5 being what it is now, that probably won't happen for at least a couple of years. There's only one PCIe 5.0 slot and one PCIe 3.0 slot, which is more than adequate for most gaming builds, but will limit its usefulness for builds that may require multiple GPUs. Additionally, there are 4 M.2 slots, allowing for a very large quantity of NVMe drives to be installed directly into the motherboard. Connectivity is another area where this might begin to see some issues with future proofing. It comes with a Wi-Fi 6 connection capability, not 6, which is slowly but surely becoming the standard. Similar to the DDR4 vs DDR5 question, this likely won't be a deal breaker for a while yet. But if you are looking for the top of the line in all categories, it is a fairly obvious shortcoming. Next at number 4, we have Asus ROG Strix B550 Gaming. The Asus ROG Strix B550, like all motherboards, starts with a layered fiberglass base for strength, so it isn't purely white. However, it covers all external components in sturdy laser etched silver and lace white, and silver accents across the whole interior. Many of these provide additional cooling in the form of heatsinks, which dissipate the heat across a wider area, exposing more of it to airflow if you've opted for fan cooling. It also comes with the capability for customizing and syncing RGB. Asus primarily makes motherboards for AMD, so you'll find this motherboard is compatible with 3rd and 5th Gen AMD Ryzen C+, one of the most popular processors to date. This white motherboard is also set up for optimal memory management. There are 2 M.2 ports, which are a more compact and versatile update to the traditional SATA ports. These allow connection with a wider range of devices and will allow faster transfer and loading time from the connected SSD disks. The M.2 format has been around for a few years now, and as such, you should have no trouble finding compatible storage. One of the 2 ports is also compatible with PCIe 4.0, which is an even further upgrade to your data transfer speeds, with the PCIe 4.0 capable of performing up to 64 GT/s, or gigatransfers per second. Essentially the rate at which individual bits of information can be moved to and from the storage device. Memory-wise, the B550 a gaming also includes 4 DDR4 DIMM slots, also commonly referred to as RAM slots. This increases the total RAM capacity to a whopping 128 GB, which if you consider that most games run at peak settings with only 816 might be overkill. But the power is there if you can find a use for it. That said, it is generally going to be better to stick with just 2 sticks of RAM. Even with the extra capacity, certain brands can experience issues with more than 2 sticks, most commonly routing, but also signal integrity. It is also going to be cheaper to buy an equivalent amount of RAM spread across 2 sticks than across 4. The only exception would generally be if you're looking to maximize your RAM power beyond what 2 sticks can currently deliver. You won't be able to use the new DDR5 format, but the price of that will likely outweigh the benefits for at least a couple more years. The Ethernet port supports connection speeds of up to 2.5 Gb, which will more than support the speeds necessary for gaming, and will allow you to download large files like game program files. The motherboard itself is not Wi-Fi capable, which can be a downside, depending on how you have your internet set up. The number 5 position is held by GIGABYTE Z590 Vision G. The GIGABYTE Z590 Vision G is a powerful, modern-looking motherboard. It's going to be great for gamers, but not being tailored specifically to them. Both in terms of aesthetics and performance, is going to give this one a broader appeal. This motherboard is still going to have the black baseboard, but the placement and coloring of the trim and heatsinks make it look wider if that themed aspect of your build is taking a top spot in your priorities. The more modern look comes at the cost of some cooling capability, so you may need a little more power dedicated to cooling. It's compatible with 10th and 11th Gen Intel CPUs, so you'll be able to run the most powerful and current Intel processors. Storage-wise, there are 4 M.2 slots, 3 PCIe 4.0, and 1 PCIe 3.0 that are going to deliver high transfer rates with whatever SSD you choose. This gives you the ability to have massive amounts of SSD storage, which is especially handy to professionals and content creators who rely on quick data transfers. Besides that, there are 3 PCIe X16 slots, with one being a PCIe, the 4.0 slot. This is where you place your graphics card, and the other 2 PCIe 3.0. The number 6 position is dominated by Asus Prime X570 Pro. The Asus Prime X570 Pro just plain looks powerful. It's further from purely white, but the large patches of silver and white trim give it a striking effect, and the customizable RGB lighting makes this as attractive as it is powerful. As with the ROG Strix above, the Prime X570 has its heatsinks prominently displayed, which is a bonus both for cooling and the appearance of power. This motherboard is compatible with 3rd Gen AMD processors and has improved power throughputs, which will support even the highest core offerings from AMD. Storage-wise, the motherboard features dual M.2 slots, which will deliver extremely quick data transfer speeds across your hard drive. The dual slots will add some size and redundancy to your storage as well. Obviously, it's still going to be a good idea to have some sort of external backup, but gamers especially will appreciate the high level of onboard storage. Besides that, the motherboard includes 6 SATA ports for connecting to SATA devices. The 4 DIMM slots operate at 4400 MHz, which will allow you to get the most out of your connected DDR4 RAM. The total RAM capacity is 128, which is going to be more than enough for most users. The extra capacity means that it will handle smaller quantities of RAM without any difficulty whatsoever. It's your choice as to whether you want to use all 4 slots, but it is generally more efficient to just load the first 2 with your desired quantity of RAM. It supports LAN connection speeds of up to 2.5 GB/s, which is standard for most current-gen motherboards. This is going to deliver extremely high speeds on local networks or when wired into your modem/router. Unfortunately, it doesn't support Wi-Fi, another common issue for the current gen. But if that's a big need for you, it's a minor fix. If you do a lot of competitive gaming, you'll want to wire it in directly if at all possible. But if not, be sure to spring for a higher-end Wi-Fi adapter. There's no shortage of connection ports as well. There's the full spectrum of audio options for both headsets and speaker systems, including an optical port. In addition, there are 5 USB 3.2 Gen 2 ports, 6 3.2 ports, 4 USB 2.0, and 1 USB Type-C Gen 2 port, way more than you'll probably ever need. Moving on to the next at number 7 with AsRock B365 Prefer. At a glance, AsRock looks a lot like Asus, both in terms of branding and design. In fact, AsRock is a spin-off of Asus, which almost exclusively makes motherboards. Their other products are industrial and commercial PCs, so you're going to get a lot of the same power and performance that you would from the more well-known Asus brand, but often at a more budget-friendly price. The B365 Prefer is a great example of this. You get a stylish, silver-trimmed motherboard with the powerful heatsinks you saw in the Asus options from earlier at a much better price. The only major drawback to this motherboard is going to be CPU compatibility, though this is common with budget motherboards. This one is only going to line up with 8th and 9th Gen Intel CPUs and have a total capacity of 95 U. That's going to be a setback for major gaming or content creation needs, or if you intended to overclock your CPU. But it's still going to work well for basic operations and high-end gaming. This motherboard comes with 2 M.2 ports, current-gen connectors for enhanced SSD connection and performance. The addition of a SATA cable creates more options for connection as well. There are a total of 4 DDR4 RAM slots. The relatively low power keeps the total RAM capacity for the motherboard at 64. Most major operations will run at max settings using only 1632 GB. So you'll still get plenty of power on that front. The number 8 position is held by GIGABYTE X299 DESIGNARE X. The X299 DESIGNARE takes us firmly back into premium territory. This motherboard is covered with silver trim and RGB lights, making it look like a cross between a piece of a spaceship and something you'd see in a commercial for racers. It's a gorgeous and insanely powerful motherboard, and you can tell that just by looking at it. It's going to be well worth it as the centerpiece of a high-end, white-themed build. This was never going to be a motherboard that you put a base level processor in, so the fact that it only works with the current X series CPUs isn't really a problem. Just something you need to be aware of. You should only buy this motherboard if you're looking at an NAND and looking to max out all other aspects of your build. The CPU seat also has multiple temperature sensors and a high-capacity heatsink. There's a total of 8 DDR4 RAM slots, but the power still only supports 128, which you can get on a lot of mid-range motherboards already. Loading all 8 is going to be more or less the exclusive domain of major workstations, which often use specialized industrial components. So this is a point where GIGABYTE has gone for a weirdly balanced overkill rather than the raw functional power you get from the rest of the part. There are 3 M.2 ports, allowing for massive amounts of onboard storage. It also has 5 PCIe 3.0 slots, allowing you to easily install multiple GPUs for unparalleled gaming or video editing performance. Next at number 9, we have AsRock X570 Prefer. When it comes to motherboards, like with all other PC parts, there's a sweet spot where if you pay the right amount of money, you get an across-the-board reliable component that does everything in a satisfactorily average way. That's the AsRock X570. It looks like a motherboard, it acts like a motherboard, you will spend the amount of money you expect on it, and you wanted to think about it again. It's not going to have the same aesthetic value as some of the other options on our list, but it's not ugly by any means. It's compatible with Series 2000 and 3000 AMD Ryzen processors, which gives you plenty of options without making you feel like you're wasting money if you don't go for the highest tiers. It's got 2 M.2 ports, which is going to give you plenty of memory and access it quickly and smoothly. There's a total of 4 DDR4 RAM, with slots with support for up to 4,666 MHz speeds and 128 capacity. That's more than you'll need for most regular operations, which take between 16 and 32 for peak performance. The only thing that could remotely be called subpar is the connection speeds. It's capable of up to 1 GLAN speed, which is a bit lower than some otherwise comparable options, but it's still going to be plenty quick. It's also all Wi-Fi capable, which would have nicely rounded out a very nicely average component, but it's also not a difficult or expensive fix if you get an adapter. Finally, the number 10 position is dominated by GIGABYTE B450i AORUS. All of our suggestions up until now have been ATX motherboards, which are standard sizes and are going to be compatible with most parts and cases on the market. The B450 AORUS is a mini ITX, a more compact motherboard, which will lend itself to a more compact and, if necessary, portable build. Some mini ITX motherboards can be limited in terms of the parts they're compatible with. But the main reason we've picked the B450 AORUS for our mini ITX recommendation is that it's broadly compatible with most parts. There's also a fair bit of metal construction and reinforcement, which is going to make for a sturdier build if transportability is on your list. Now, the motherboard is compatible with all 3 generations of Ryzen processors, which is a level of flexibility unrivaled by any entry on our list. This flexibility is going to enable you to build anything from a high-performance gaming PC to an extremely budget-friendly basic rig. This is an advantage of mini ITX builds in general, but this motherboard captures it especially well. The compact design of the motherboard and the build in general is going to cause it to run a bit hotter. So the M.2 slot has a thermal shield to prevent heat damage to your SSD. There is a fully compatible PCIe slot as well, which allows a full-size graphics card without any issue. That's all for today. We upload computer and accessories product review videos every single day, so don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon for the upcoming video notification.